Hello. Good to see all of you here today. Of course, welcome to another day of reading. Reading is fundamental, people. Try to get it into your heads. Fun to mental. So good to see all of you here today. Welcome to the JB Font channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you. And come in, sit down, have a seat, grab your book because we're going to be doing a little bit of reading today. So come in, put your feet up. Did you grab a snack? Go ahead, go grab a snack. Okay. Come back in. Gives you something to drink. I got me a little water here. All right. To wet my whistle. I want you to keep your whistles wet. So good to see you on this beautiful day. Just to let you guys know, the JB Font channel is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1, on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4, and the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. And you can catch me on my regular show, live streaming every single Tuesday at 2 p.m. Also, thank you to all the members as well as the patrons on Patreon and Coffee. Thank you so very much for all your contributions. Also, the people who are contributing are also in the Chiron scrolling down below. So if you guys would like to, you guys can go to my Patreon as well so that you guys can also contribute if you would like to as well. Just to let you guys know, I also have a Substack. So if you guys want to be on the mailing list so that you guys get notifications, you guys can also go to the Substack as well. It's jbfont.substack.com. So thanks. Now, one of the things we're going to be talking about today is Miss Assata Shakur. So we're doing the next reading for Assata Shakur's autobiography. This is chapter 6, part 2 of chapter 6. Now, this is going to be a rough one. One of the reasons why is because we're going to get into some assault. And so this is very important to her story. And so I will be reading it. And unfortunately, if you are triggered by anything relating to sexual assault, anything like that, then I want to give you viewer discretion is advised, or reader discretion is advised, as it were, because this is an important part of her story, but I want to give people the means to skip this recording, skip this live, not this live, but this video, because that part will be in this reading. So I'm just going to give you guys a heads up now. But this is also important for her story, and I would like to make sure that we have the full story, all of its context. So that's why I will be reading this. And there will be some words that I typically don't say. You know what? I'll just bleep myself. But it is important for the context of what is going on. Okay. So, chapter 6, part 2, we're going to be beginning on page 109 of the book. So, let's get into it, folks. Okay. So I read a little bit further than I should have last time. So for the live stream that I did. So I'm going to start a little bit before I end it, just so that we're in, because I'd rather you guys hear it again than miss any parts. I could see Miss Shirley knew what she was talking about. But what am I going to do, Miss Shirley? You know how hard it is to find a job. Don't worry, honey. I'll come up with something. The next day, when I went down to the lobby, Freddie was behind the desk. I hear you're looking for a job, he said. Uh-huh. You know anything about being a barmaid? No, I told him. Well, you go over to this place, Tony's, on 3rd Street, and ask for a guy named Chuck. Tell him I sent you. Thanks. Thanks a lot. I went over to Tony's and talked to Chuck. Do you have any openings? I asked him. Sure. We always have openings for foxes like you, he said. He laughed. Do you know the setup? No. $15 a night, and you get a quarter for each drink and $1 for each bottle of champagne. I looked at him blankly. Your job is to sit and look pretty and keep the customers happy and buying. You work from 8 in the evening to 4 in the morning when the place closes. What you do after that is your business. Just don't make any deals on the premises. Yes, I answered wearily. Well then, see you tonight. When I got back to the hotel, I told Miss Shirley about my new job. Aye, honey, but you be real careful. There are a whole lot of crazy peoples around here. And you keep looking for a real job so you can go to school at night. Now, come on upstairs and let me show you how to put your face on. You look like a 2-bit hoe. Miss Shirley did not miss any words, man. Ooh, boy. At 10 to 8, I was at Tony's. Chuck was there and introduced me to the barmaid. Her name was Joyce. Come here a minute, honey. She told me and went to the end of the bar. I followed her. You like whiskey sours? I guess so. I never had one. Whatever you do, don't get drunk. I'm going to make your drinks without the whiskey. If a customer comes in and I know he's suspicious type, I'll make you a real one. If you want to drink with the whiskey in it, just order with your hands folded. There's not too much I can do about the champagne. I try to keep pouring into the man's glass, but it's not too bad and the bottles are small. Okay, thanks. I went to the bar and sat down. In a few minutes, a couple of the white guys came in. They sat 2 seats down from me and kept looking in my direction. What would you like to drink? One said. Would you like a drink? One said. Okay, I answered. What are you drinking? A whiskey sour. And he began what seemed like a never-ending parade of whiskey-less whiskey sours. It got so that even the smell of the stuff made me sick. Once in a while, I would ask the barmaid to put some whiskey in one, but I'd never been much of a drinker. Most of the customers were white men who were looking for some action. I found most of them to be crude, boring, and creepy. I would sit there, making up different stories to tell them just to keep myself amused. Another object of these stories was to get them to spend as much money as possible. If I thought the man would go for a sob story and hand over some money, I would tell him a real tearjerker. Other times, I pretended to be a college girl going to NYU. This made them less likely to be bold. When I played the college girl, I usually said I was a math major because nobody ever knows the first thing about math. One night, though, after I told this guy my math major story, he asked me some questions about integrals and imaginary numbers. I didn't have the faintest idea what the guy was talking about. It turned out he taught math at NYU. I know you're lying, he told me. Of course I am. Who in the hell is going to be interested in a life as a waitress? The guy broke out laughing. That deserves a drink, he said. Bring the lady another drink. After that, the guy, I called him Mr. Math, came by every so often to hang out. He would buy drinks and would sit there cracking jokes. How's your thesis going? He would ask. Fine, I'd answer. I'm doing chronological study about the social significance of 2 and 2 equal 4. I had a few other regulars. Most of them came to tell me their troubles. They either had a wife trouble or job trouble. Some were drunks who just wanted somebody to drink with, and others just like the challenge of trying to seduce a young girl. A lot of the other girls were prostitutes. A few who weren't were either just out to make some extra money or they were alcoholics. Most of the other women were very nice and protective of me. The prostitutes liked me because I was always sending them business and was always discreet about it. Soon I made friends with the guys in the jazz quartet that worked there regularly. I've always loved jazz and would clap and shout and let them know that I enjoyed the music. The piano player and I became especially tight. I called him my big brother, and he was always protective of me. When the place closed, he and maybe one or two of the group would walk me home. If it was raining, he would send me home in a cab. Closing time was the roughest time of all. Some of the men thought that buying drinks entitled them to more than conversation. But Chuck was a good bouncer and could spot a problem before it became serious. If a guy was getting out of hand, Chuck would approach him, tell him that I was the sister of one of the guys in the band, and if he didn't treat me with respect, he would let him have it. At times, some real freaks and weirdos hung out there. There was one guy who bought the panties of almost every woman who worked at Tony's, paying them each $15. I asked him what he did with them. He laughed and told me he hung them on the walls of his apartment. When I told one of the other girls, she laughed. Girl, you believe that? The guy takes him home, holds him over his nose. He's a sniff freak. I'm going to tell y'all, by the way, when you guys get to into this chapter, you guys are going to be like, so keep all this stuff in mind, right? Keep this all in the back of your head. But any woman at Tony's had to be careful. Some of the men who came around there were real dangerous. On nights when things were slow and there were no customers in place, the women would tell horror stories about all the crazy men they had run into. I was big for my age and well built. With all the makeup I wore, I could usually pass for 18. I told everybody I was 19. The white people never questioned my age, but the black people would, sooner or later, realize I was younger than I let on. Some of them even guessed I had run away and would take me to the side and encourage me to go home. After a while, all the women who worked at the place teased me about not having a boyfriend. This girl don't like men and she don't like women. Here's a girl that let her fingers do the walking. When they teased me, I wanted to crawl into a crack somewhere and hide. The more embarrassed I became, the more they laughed. A new bass player came in to work for the band, and I developed an instant crush on him. I was convinced I was in love. In a short time, everybody knew about my crush, but the bass player paid me no mind at all. I did everything I could to attract his attention, but he just ignored me. Near closing time, his white girlfriend would come in and they would leave together. I hated her. She looked so smug. One weekday night, it was pouring rain outside, and the place was empty. The bass player said to me, I was writing a song for you. You want to hear it? I could have fainted. I was grinning from ear to ear. Yes, I'd like to hear it. Da 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 ta ta da dee dee. Da 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 ta ta da dee dee. Jailbait. Da 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 ta ta dee dee. Da 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 ta ta dee dee. Jailbait. The rest of the group chimed in, jailbait, jailbait, and the whole place cracked up. I could have died right then and there. That was the end of my crush. When I thought about it later, I thought it was funny. Sorry. That's annoying. Jailbait. Let's keep reading. A lot of the black men that I met in the village were hung up on white women. Some of them would come right out and tell you, man, I can't dig no spade chick. Give me an O-Fate every day. When I asked them why, they would say white women are sweeter, black women are evil, white women are more understanding, black women are more demanding. One of the things that really infuriated me was when they called black women sapphire. You know how you nigger women are. Sapphire, evil. A lot of these guys would have trampled over my face just to get to a white woman. Yep. Look, I gotta put this out there. If you gotta demonize the women within your own race or culture in order to say why you like a woman of another race or culture, you got a problem. If you gotta demonize them in order to explain your attraction to them, I'm just saying. Anyway, at times I got really sick of being around so many grown people. I either sneak back into my old neighborhood or hang out with Pat and Ronnie. One night they were going to a party uptown. Viewer discretion advised. One night they were going to a party uptown. I was dying to be with kids my own age. So I told Chuck I was taking the night off. We got to the party. It was dull and tired, so Pat and Ronnie went out to find some reefer, weed. They loved the stuff, but I was scared of it. I waited and waited for them to get back. I started to talk to a boy who seemed really nice about how dull the party was. He said he knew of a boss party that was going to be happening later. I waited for Pat and Ronnie to come back, but they never did. Why don't you come to the party with me? The boy asked. It's at my house. I'm sure you'll have a good time. Finally, I said I would go. He seemed so nice. He lived in some projects near Spanish Harlem. When we got to his house, no one was there. I started to leave, but he said his friends were at a ball game and they would be there afterward. In a little while, the doorbell rang, and sure enough, all these people came in. After a minute, I noticed they were all boys. Excuse me, the boy said. Then they all went to the other room for a minute. Then they returned. They were whispering and talking under their breaths. I could tell they were up to something. Where are the girls? I asked. Oh, they're coming. One came and sat next to me. He put his hand on my leg. I moved it away. Come on, baby. Why you want to act like that? Come here, man, one of them said. I could sense that something was wrong. I didn't know what they were up to, but I knew they were up to something. I picked up my pocketbook and my sweater. I have to be going. No, baby, you ain't going nowhere. I have to go. I started walking towards the door. One of them grabbed my arm and yanked me away from the door. Sit your ass back down, B. I'm not going to say the word, but you guys know. We got plans for you. I knew it now. They were going to rape me. I had heard people talking about trains, but I had never thought it would happen to me. I sat still for a minute. Then I made a wild break for the door. They tried to grab me, and I fought like hell. The fight didn't last too long, though, because in a minute, they had me held down on the floor. They were pulling up my skirt and taking my blouse off. I cried and I screamed. Shut up, B, one of them said, slapping my face. I begged them for mercy. I told them I was a virgin. There's always a first time, baby, someone sneered. I begged and I pleaded. I cried and I cried. I couldn't believe they could be so heartless, but they were. The boy who brought me there was arguing with another boy about who would be first. I couldn't believe it. It was a nightmare. They were arguing and carrying on as if I wasn't even human, as if I was some kind of thing. I felt so scared and betrayed. I had trusted this boy. The argument between them was heated. I hoped they would fight and kill each other. I kept begging for mercy, pleading with them. They paid me no attention. One of them came over to me as if he felt sorry for me. Don't worry, baby. It won't hurt. You'll see. You'll like it. Okay, I heard the boy who had brought me here to say. You can go first, man. And the other boy started towards me. I jumped up and tried to run, but I was cornered. One tried to grab me, and in the process, he knocked over an ashtray. Be careful, man, the boy whose house it was. My mother would kill me if this house gets messed up. That was my cue. I picked up a vase and threw it at the wall, picked up a lamp and something else, crying and screaming at the same time. You might get me, but I'm going to mess up your mother's house before you do. The boy who was supposed to go first made a leap for me and missed. I kicked over the table and knocked over a plant that was on the stand. Get back! Get back! I screamed. The boy whose house it was grabbed the boy who was supposed to go first. Come on, man. My mother's going to kill me. Get back! Get back! I screamed. I'm going to throw this lamp straight into that mirror. There was a big mirror hanging behind the couch. Get them out of here. Get them out of here. Or I'll this house up. I was shaking and crying, but I was serious as hell. I was going to mess that boy's house up so bad no one would recognize it. Get them out of here, I said, kicking the table over. Come on, the boy said. Y'all got to get out of here. My mother's going to have a fit. You crazy bee, one of them said to me. Come on, let's jump on her, man. She can't do that much damage. It's the man's house, one of the others said. Come on, let's go. Get him out of here, I screeched at the top of my lungs. Okay, one of them said. We'll wait for you outside, baby. Slowly, in what seemed forever, they left. Only the boy who had bought me remained. I could see that he was trying to figure out some way to jump me. Don't come near me. You better stay back. I don't know what I was going to do next. They were all waiting for me outside. I couldn't call the police because the police were looking for me. Get back, I told the boy, and who looked like he was trying to ease up close to me. All right, get away from the door. I still had the lamp and something else in my hands. Back there, I told him, indicating the back of the apartment, or I'll smash your house up. When he moved back, I looked through the peephole. There was nobody in the hallway. They must be waiting downstairs, I thought. All right, I yelled. Get over by the door. He moved to the door. Now get all the way out in the hallway and knock on one of your neighbor's doors and bring a grown-up back here. What? You heard me, sucker. Now move. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't my idea. I didn't want to do it. I had to. I don't want to hear that shit. Just get your ass out there in the hall, or I'll mess up your house so your mother won't even think it's her house. Please, the boy said. Please, my ass, I screamed. You don't get out here. If you don't get out here and knock on one of those doors, you can forget about your mother's house. I went outside. He went outside into the hallway. I slammed the door after him and watched the people as he knocked on the door. A lady answered, and I opened the door and started begging her to help me. Please, miss, help me. They're trying to get me, I screamed, crying all over again. I had the lamp in my hand. Please walk me downstairs to the subway or to a cab. What happened, honey? She asked. They tried to do it to me, I cried. The woman looked at me and then at the boy. You wait here for a minute, honey, she said. Then she said to her husband came out. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you now. They brought me downstairs into the cab. Thought a lot about those boys after that night. I hated them. But what I couldn't understand is why they hated me so much. Everybody was always saying what a dog-eat-dog world it was. There were all kinds of people in that world, and most of them seemed unhappy. Everybody seemed to be on their own bag, and for a few seemed to care about anybody else. I have read this play by satire. The play ended with the conclusion that hell is other people, And for a while, I agreed. Back then, when I was growing up, boys gang banging or gang raping a girl was a pretty common thing. They called it pulling a train. It didn't happen to any particular kind of girl. It happened to girls who were going to the wrong place at the wrong time. The boys talked about it like it was a joke or a game, like they were only out to have some fun. If the girl was caught on the wrong side of the park or in the wrong territory or on the wrong street, she was a target. It was a common thing back then for boys to downgrade girls and cuss at them in the street. It was common for them to go to bed with girls and talk about them like dogs the next day. It was common for boys to deny they were fathers of their babies. It was common for boys to beat up girls and knock them around. And then the girls would get hard too. If the nigga ain't got no money, I don't want to be bothered. If the nigga ain't got no car, then later for him. The more I watched how boys and girls behave, the more I read and the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that this behavior could be traced directly back to the plantation, where slaves were encouraged to take the misery of their lives out on each other instead of their master. The slave masters taught us that we were ugly, less than human, unintelligent, and many of us believed it. Black people became breeding animals, studs and mares. A black woman was fair game for anyone at that time, a master or a visiting guest or any redneck who desired her. The slave master would order her to have sex with the stud, seven, even with that stud, for the purpose of increasing his stock. She was considered less than a woman. She was a cross between a whore and a workhorse. Black men internalized the white man's opinion of black women. And if you ask me, a lot of us still act like we're back on the plantation with massa pulling strings. After my close call in Uptown, I became more skeptical of everybody. I was much more careful about the situations that I let myself fall into. I would talk to the men at Tony's, but more and more I became strictly business. The more I saw street life, the uglier it was. One day, I was walking down 8th Street. I saw one of my aunt's friends. Her name was Abby or Addie or something like that, and she was as big as a truck. I turned my head, hoping she wouldn't recognize me. Joey? Joey! I heard her cry out. I kept walking. She kept calling. I kept walking. Then I felt her grab my arm. I know you, she said. You're Joey. Your aunt and your mother were worried to death about you. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. My name is Joyce, and I don't know you or anyone that you're talking about. Come off it, Joey, she said. You're not fooling me. Come with me while I call your aunt. She had my arm in an iron grip. I thought of making a run for it, but she was too big to play with. She took me to some bar and told me to sit at the counter while she made a call. As soon as she started dialing, I made a beeline for the door. She was right on top of me, grabbing me with that iron grip. You're not going anywhere until your aunt gets down here. In half an hour, Evelyn was on the scene, throwing questions at me left and right. Where have you been? What have you been doing? Where have you been staying? What have you been doing for money? How have you been eating? She asked, and a million questions more. When Evelyn questioned me, she sounded like a lawyer cross-examining a witness. In about an hour, I had broken down and told her everything. She admitted that I'd take her to the hotel where I was staying. After I had packed my things, she told the guy behind the desk, Do you know that you had a 13-year-old girl staying here? I could have had you prosecuted for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The guy looked at me like he just couldn't believe it. I could have crawled under the floor. Then she called up Tony's and told him the same thing. I was dying of embarrassment, but in a way, I was glad it was over. I was getting tired of all the streets. I was tired of being grown and wanted to be a kid again. Everything that I just read, everything, from all the way to the beginning of chapter 6, 13, 13, 13, 13-year-old girl. All that happened. When I read that part, I didn't know how old she was because she never said in the beginning of the chapter. When I read that part, I was like, I'm thinking maybe 16, something like that. 13-year-old girl. Almost sexually assaulted by a group of boys. Man, this book, I'm telling you, Assata Shakur has been through a lot. So much. And that type of assault, I gotta choose my words carefully because it's YouTube. But that type of assault, man, unfortunately, there's too many women that it has happened to. I mean, one woman is a woman too many, but unfortunately, most of the women that you probably know in your life, if you're a man, especially a cis man, most of the women that you know in your life have most likely faced that type of assault. Most. It's actually more rare for a woman to not have faced it than to have faced it. From when they're little girls all the way up to womanhood. And that's in the story of a lot of them, unfortunately. If every woman wrote an autobiography, you're going to, if they choose to write about it, it's in there. This is why it's important for us to talk to our boys, our young men, to let them know that we have to treat them, women, with respect. And consent is absolutely necessary. Even when it comes to coercion, we have to talk to them about even the coercion and begging for it when they actually don't want to do it. That's still assault because the person actually didn't want to give it, but you coerced them into giving it reluctantly. So we have to be careful. We have to teach young men that you can't just do that. See what I mean? But yeah, so that was the end of chapter 6. And we will be going on to chapter 7 on the next reading. Chapter 7 starts on page 118. I'm glad she fought her way out of that situation, man. I'm glad. And so when I get to uh, chapter 7. It's going to be an interesting story, man, as it continues. That is it for chapter 6. I'm trying to think of another book that I'm going to be reading right now. I'm reading. I'm trying to get into the 3 sources and 3 components of Marxism. So I'm reading that right now. I'm reading it on my own time. Maybe I'll into it on here. I don't know. I'm also thinking about a lot of people who I could read, but I'm trying to get into Marxism too. I'm trying to read that and trying to get a deep dive into that. So we'll see what I can do as far as that's concerned. I don't know. Some of this stuff is complex, so I might have to read over and over and over again. But I'm glad I'm getting into Assata Shakur's book. I would love to interview her. After reading this book, I would love to just sit down and just talk to her. And one of the things I would love to ask her is her thoughts about what improvements could be made to the Western left. Like, what does she feel like we need to do in order to improve so that we can push for more revolutionary potential? I know she is in Cuba right now. If Miss Assata Shakur, if you ever get to see this, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you. But yeah, that would be a question I would ask for her. Like, what question would you ask her at this stage of, getting to know her in her autobiography? What would you ask? Like, put that in the comments. Like, what other parts of her life would you want to know about? Or what opinions regarding movements and organizing? There's so many things you could probably ask her, though. So I'm very curious. I do read the comments, by the way, just to let you guys know. But yeah, that's it. So this was the reading for Assata Shakur. Thank you so very much. And also thank you to all the patrons on Patreon, as well as Coffee, as well as the members, and anybody who sends me any type of mutual aid via various platforms. That means a lot because a brother is struggling, and I appreciate it. Don't forget, I'll be doing a news story on Tuesday. I'll be doing news stories. And I'm also on RBN on the JB show. I'll be having on Eddie Liger Smith from Midwestern Marks. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. So if you guys are also subscribed to Revolutionary Blackout Network, you guys can catch me on the JB show on 1 p.m. So that'd be great. Anywho, I don't think I have anything else to say. Say less, I guess. All right, everybody. Like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you've done it. Reading is fundamental. And you can smoke them if you got them, if you like, or drink them if you got them. Have a whiskey sour. But one thing is for sure, to everybody out there, teach consent. It is deeply important. And stay safe out there. Forehead kisses. Love you.